Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are opening a file that, I'll be honest with you, it made me squirm a little bit while I was reading through the research. You know those topics that feel like they're pointing a finger directly at you?
The ones that hold up a mirror you didn't ask for.
Exactly. We are diving into a stack of notes about the gap, and sometimes it's a canyon between what we say and how we actually live. It's about ethics, but not the, theoretical kind you talk about over a glass of wine.
No, this is the gritty, uncomfortable stuff. We're talking public virtue versus private action.
It's a fundamental question, really, and our source material today brings it right into the 21st century.
It does. We're looking at what the author calls the merchandising of virtue.
And to set the stage, I want to take you back to a very specific time and place. I want you to visualize this. It is the autumn of 2001, New York City.
A heavy time.
Incredibly heavy. The dust has barely settled from the September 11th attacks. We are talking maybe 2 months later. The air in the city is thick with tension, with grief, and with this weird sense of fragility.
Yeah, everyone was on edge.
It was a moment where all the trivialities of the 90s had just evaporated. People were looking for meaning, for something solid.
Right. And inside a radio station, I believe it was WNYC, we have a collision between two very different worlds.
On one side of the glass, we have our narrator. He's the author of the source material we're analyzing today. And his world is, well, he's a trader.
So he deals in risk, probability, mathematics, the methy, concrete reality of the markets.
He's a practitioner, someone who lives and dies by the consequences of his decisions. If he's wrong, he loses money. It's immediate, brutal feedback.
There's no hiding.
No hiding. And on the other side of the glass, waiting for her interview, is Susan Sontag.
Titan.
A towering figure, the dark lady of American letters. I mean, if there was a hierarchy of the New York intelligentsia, Susan Sontag was sitting on the Iron Throne.
Absolutely. An icon of culture, literature, liberal thought.
So you have the trader and the intellectual. It sounds like the setup to a joke.
It really does.
And the interaction, it starts pleasantly enough. They're in the green room or the hallway, and Sontag is actually piqued by him. She asks him what he does.
And what does he say?
He tells her he writes about randomness. And you could almost see her eyes light up. Randomness sounds literary. It sounds philosophical.
It's a safe intellectual concept. It fits into her world of high-minded abstract ideas.
Exactly. But then the coin drops. She pushes a little further and asks about his actual profession, his day job. And he tells her, I am a trader.
And the atmosphere in the room just freezes.
It turns on a dime. The source describes her reaction as immediate, visceral hostility. She doesn't just disagree with him. She looks at him with genuine disgust.
Just for his job title.
Just for the title, she blurts out, I am against the market system.
Which is, a fair opinion to have in theory.
In theory, sure. But then, and this is the detail that really sticks with me, the cinematic moment. She physically turns her back on him.
Mid-sentence.
Mid-sentence. She faces the wall rather than look at a man who trades stocks. And her assistant, the assistant looks at him as if he had been convicted of child killing.
Wow. That's a brutal reaction. It's a violation of what the source calls the silver rule.
The silver rule. I know the golden rule.
Right. So the golden rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The silver rule is the negative version. Do not treat others the way you would not like to be treated.
So basic, fundamental courtesy.
The absolute baseline of human interaction. And she just shattered it instantly.
So our narrator is standing there looking at the back of Susan Sontag's head, feeling like a criminal. And here's where it gets really interesting. He tries to rationalize it.
He tries to make it make sense.
He does. He thinks, okay, she's rude, she's incredibly arrogant, but maybe she has a point. Maybe she's earned this.
So he starts to construct a fantasy to justify her behavior.
Exactly. He thinks if she hates the market system this much, she must live her values. He imagines she lives in a rural commune somewhere.
Growing her own vegetables.
Yes. He pictures her hand-washing her clothes, writing with a pencil to avoid supporting tech companies, bartering for goat cheese. The whole romantic ideal.
He imagines that she has completely opted out of the system she claims to hate.
He's assuming that her moral indignation comes from a place of purity, that she has skin in the game, that she lives the consequences of her beliefs.
Which would at least make her consistent. Rude, but consistent.
Right. But then comes the reveal. And this is the gotcha moment that frames our entire discussion. Years later, after Sontag passes away, the narrator reads her obituary. And what does he find?
The reality was let's say, a little less pastoral.
A little less. She didn't grow vegetables. She didn't live in a hut. She shared a mansion in New York City that was later sold for $28 million.
28 million.
Let that sink in. And it gets worse.
Oh, it gets worse.
Yeah.
The source mentions that people in the publishing industry actually complain about her rapacity.
Rapacity. That's a strong word.
It is. She was known for squeezing her publishers, Farrar, Straus, and Giroux, for millions of dollars. She negotiated fiercely. She was a master of the system.
So she wasn't just in the market system. She was a shark within the market system.
She was extracting maximum value from the very thing she told the trader she was against.
This sets up the core conflict we are exploring today. The source argues that she likely felt that insulting people with money, like the trader, gave her a sort of unimpeachable sainthood.
Like a moral get-out-of-jail-free card.
Exactly. As if her opinions exempted her from having to actually live by her stated values.
It's a mechanism of psychological protection, isn't it? If I yell loudly enough about how bad the system is, nobody will notice that I'm profiting from it. Or maybe, and this is the scary part, I won't even notice I'm profiting from it.
That brings us to the mission statement for this deep dive. We are talking about the merchandising of virtue.
It's a powerful phrase. And the central question we are trying to answer today is this. Is it immoral to claim virtue without living with its direct consequences?
And the source takes a very hard, almost ruthless line on this. We're going to explore hypocrisy, the difference between public and private ethics, and how both corporations and individuals sell morality to buy status.
So, yeah, this is going to be a challenging one.
Buckle up. Let's start with that first big idea, the immorality of hypocrisy.
Right. So going back to the Sontag example, the source makes a very nuanced point here, and it's easy to miss. He says, it is not immoral to oppose the market system.
You're allowed to hate capitalism. That's a valid philosophical stance.
Completely. But there is a condition, a huge one. You are allowed to hate it if you live isolated from it.
If you're actually in that hut.
If you are actually in that hut in Vermont or a cave in northwestern Afghanistan, surviving on your own crops and barter, then your opposition is consistent. You have skin in the game. You are paying the price for your belief.
Your life is your argument.
Your life is your argument. But if you are living in a $28 million mansion and negotiating million-dollar book deals,
then what?
Then, according to the source, it is much more immoral. And we need to define immoral here because he uses it in a specific way. The source defines personal gain as anything that benefits you without you sharing the downside of a negative action.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
If you claim virtue, I am anti-market, you gain something, right? You gain social status. You gain the admiration of the intelligentsia. You get to feel superior to the trader.
That's the gain, a reputational gain.
Exactly. But if you don't share the downside, if you don't actually give up the comforts of the market, you are exploiting the system for that reputation.
You're double dipping. You get the social credit for being a rebel and the financial credit of being a capitalist.
Exactly. You're free riding on the very system you claim to despise. And the source argues this is a form of theft. You are stealing reputation.
Now, to be fair, the source doesn't just complain. He offers counterexamples. He points to people who, even if you disagree with them, actually walk the walk.
Right. He highlights a couple of key figures. First, Ralph Nader.
Nader. A controversial figure politically, for sure.
Very. But the source isn't interested in his politics. He's interested in his lifestyle. He describes Nader as leading the life of a monk.
A monk?
Essentially. The text says Nader lived in a small rooming house for years. He didn't own a car. He didn't pursue wealth. He basically lived like a member of a monastery in the 16th century.
So his life was aligned with his message of anti-consumerism and corporate skepticism.
Perfectly aligned. The argument is that his lifestyle matched his advocacy. He wasn't preaching against consumerism while driving a Ferrari.
That makes sense. Whether you like his politics or not, you have to respect the consistency, the integrity of it.
Exactly. And the other example is even more profound. Simone Weil.
Simone Weil, she's a fascinating figure, a true intellectual heavyweight.
A secular saint, really. She came from the French Jewish upper class. She was brilliant, educated, had every opportunity to live a life of comfortable theory in Paris.
She could have just written books about the plight of the workers. That's what most people in her position would do.
But she didn't just write. That's the key. She chose to spend a year working in a Renault car factory.
And this was the 1930s. This wasn't a cushy gig with, modern safety standards.
No, this was brutal, back-breaking, soul-crushing labor. She lived on the wages she earned. She experienced the physical and mental exhaustion firsthand.
Why? Just to say she did it, like a resume builder for intellectuals.
No, and that's the crucial difference. She did it so the working class wouldn't just be an abstract construct to her.
Ah, there's that word again.
Abstract.
It's the central villain of this whole piece. She wanted to understand the reality of that life, the fatigue, the hunger, the boredom. She removed the layer of abstraction.
She had skin in the game. Real
Skin had skin in the game. And that brings us to a really powerful concept introduced in the text. I call it the cancel function of private life.
This is a rule the source proposes, and it hits hard. It states, if your private life conflicts with your intellectual opinion, it cancels your intellectual ideas, not your private life.
Whew. Just think about that for a second. So, if I write a best-selling book about the dangers of carbon emissions and the need for austerity, but I fly a private jet to the book launch,
Then your private jet cancels out your book. The action overrides the word. Your behavior screams louder than your prose.
the source calls this a solution to vapid universalism.
Which is just a fancy way of saying you cannot have general ideas if your private actions don't generalize. If you aren't willing to live by your own rules, then they aren't real rules.
The source uses a great analogy here, the car salesman.
This is the best way to understand it. Imagine you go to a dealership. The salesman is trying to sell you a Detroit-made car. He's telling you it's the best engineering in the world, it's reliable, it's patriotic, it's a fantastic value.
He's giving you the whole pitch. He's read the marketing materials.
Right. But then, at 5:00 p.m., you see him walking to his car in the employee lot to go home. And he gets into a Honda.
Right. He's signaling a problem with his wares.
Precisely. And this isn't just about him being a hypocrite, it's about information. His behavior contains more truthful information than his speech.
Because his own money is on the line with the car he chooses to drive every day.
Exactly. If he truly believed the Detroit car was the best, he'd be driving one. The fact that he isn't tells you everything you need to know. The private choice reveals the public lie.
So the takeaway here is that you can't separate the messenger from the message when the message requires a lifestyle commitment. The messenger's life is part of the message.
Correct. You cannot be a vegetarian in theory and a carnivore in practice. The practice always wins. If you are eating the steak, you are not a vegetarian, no matter how many essays you read about animal rights.
This brings us to the next section, which digs deeper into why this disconnect happens. It's about how we view other people. We're talking about the abstract versus the concrete.
This is where we get into the psychology of what the source calls the interventionista class.
The interventionistas.
These are the theoretical people, usually in academia, policy, media, the nonprofit world, who deal in big ideas, but often despise the messy details of reality.
The source suggests that being right in theory acts like a shield.
Yes, a very powerful one. If you convince yourself that you are intellectually right, that you have the correct theory to save humanity with a capital H, it gives you a virtuous status. And paradoxically, that status can make you impervious to how your actions affect actual people right in front of you.
You're so focused on the great cause that the individual human being standing next to you becomes irrelevant.
Or worse, an annoyance, a distraction from the important work of, thinking big thoughts.
The source is pretty savage about the meeting culture that comes out of this.
Oh, absolutely. He critiques the whole industry of helping the poor by spending huge amounts of money on PowerPoint presentations and international conferences in Geneva or Davos.
The five-star hotel circuit of global aid.
Exactly. The argument is that these meetings just breed more meetings. The outcome of a conference on poverty is usually an agreement to hold another conference on poverty.
It's the bureaucracy of virtue.
And the danger here is a concept called reification.
Reification, that's a $10 word. Break it down for us.
Reification is when you turn something alive and dynamic, like a person or a community, into a rigid object, a thing.
So you take people who are poor and turn them into the poor.
Precisely. You turn them into a data set. They become an abstract, reified construct. They become numbers on a slide, a problem to be solved from 30,000 feet.
And because they are just numbers, the helper doesn't feel the need to treat them with dignity in real life. You can love the abstract poor while being rude to the actual poor person cleaning your hotel room.
It's the Sontag problem all over again. Loving the idea, hating the reality.
The source gives some pretty specific and frankly biting examples of this virtuous rudeness.
He does. And again, we're just reporting the source's perspective here, not endorsing it. He brings up Hillary Clinton, giving her this nickname, Hillary Monsanto Malmaison.
Which is quite a loaded nickname.
It is. And he claims that while she publicly championed the common man and wrote books about it, she found it permissible to heap abuse on her Secret Service agents in private.
So the argument is that there's a disconnect. She loves the people as a concept, but is rude to the actual person standing next to her, protecting her life.
That's the claim. It's the gap between the abstract and the concrete. There's another anecdote he tells about a Canadian socialist environmentalist,
Okay.
an unnamed but apparently famous figure. The source describes being on a lecture series with him. And this guy would give these thunderous, passionate speeches on equity, diversity, and fairness.
And the crowd goes wild, I assume.
Standing ovations. But then in between lectures, they'd go to a restaurant. And the source says this guy would belittle the waiters. He'd snap his fingers, complain, treat them like furniture.
Wow, that image is so vivid. Someone lecturing a crowd on fairness and then snapping their fingers at a server 10 minutes later.
It's the car salesman driving a Honda all over again, isn't it? The public signal is, I care about the little guy. The private signal is, I am above you. And the private signal is always the truth.
There's another example that I found really thought-provoking because it happens on college campuses all the time. This is what the source calls the university privilege paradox.
Oh, this one cuts deep. The source brings up Amherst College, a very prestigious, very expensive school. And you have kids there, many with very rich parents, talking endlessly about class privilege and inequality.
A common scene for sure. And there's a story about Dinesh D'Souza, the conservative commentator.
Yes. D'Souza was giving a talk at one of these schools. He was challenged by one of these students who was lecturing him on privilege. And D'Souza asked a simple, direct question.
What was it?
He said, why don't you go to the registrar's office right now and give your privileged spot to the minority student next in line on the waiting list?
Direct action, skin in the game. You have the privilege, give it up.
Yeah.
What was the response?
Well, the student couldn't answer. Or rather, the typical defense, and the source breaks this down, is that they want a systemic solution.
Right. I shouldn't have to give up my spot. The system should change to accommodate everyone.
Exactly. They claim they want the rules to change for everyone, not just for them to make a personal sacrifice. But the source finds this logic incredibly immoral.
Why? I mean, isn't systemic change what we want in the long run?
Yes, but he uses this drowning analogy to show why it's a cop-out. He says, imagine seeing someone drowning in a lake. You are standing on the shore with a life preserver.
Okay.
Imagine saying, I will save this person from drowning, only if everyone else on the shore also agrees to save someone from drowning. I won't do it alone because that's not a systemic fix.
That's chilling when you put it that way. You let the specific person drown because the system isn't perfect yet.
It is. The source argues that no ethical system on Earth allows you to let a specific person drown while you wait for a systemic fix. You can't defer your personal morality until the world becomes perfect. You have to act now with what you have.
That really underscores the abstract versus concrete theme. The student loves the abstract idea of equality, but refuses the concrete act of sacrifice.
Precisely. And that's a perfect pivot. Let's zoom out from individuals to corporations. Because if individuals are bad at this, companies are on another level. This is section 3, the virtue merchants.
Ah, yes. The merchandising of virtue in the corporate world. The classic example the source gives is one we have all seen. You walk into a hotel bathroom, and there is a little card on the towel rack.
Protect the environment. Reuse your towel.
Mother Earth thanks you. Be a partner in conservation. It sounds so noble, doesn't it?
It does, but the source just strips that veneer right off.
He follows the money.
Always follow the money. He points out that hotels want you to reuse towels, primarily because it saves them tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in laundry costs.
Detergent, water, labor, electricity, the wear and tear on the linens themselves.
It's a massive cost center. The source argues this is the perfect example of a salesperson telling you something is good for you. You're helping the planet when it is centrally good for them.
And the giveaway is that they wouldn't advertise it if it didn't help their bottom line.
Exactly. Think about it. If saving the environment actually costs the hotel money like, say, installing expensive solar panels that don't pay off for 20 years, do you think they would have those signs up everywhere?
Probably not. Or at least not with the same enthusiasm.
The source doubts it. This isn't virtue. It's virtue as a cost-cutting scheme.
And it goes beyond towels. The source lists a whole catalog of global causes, poverty, the environment, justice for minorities. He argues that for many corporations and advertisers, these causes have become the last refuge of the scoundrel advertising virtue.
That's a twist on the old Samuel Johnson quote. Patriotism is the last refuge of a scoundrel.
It is. In Johnson's time, if you were a scoundrel, you wrapped yourself in the flag to hide your bad behavior. Now, instead of the flag, corporations wrap themselves in a cause.
But the mechanic is the same. It's a shield, a way to look good without actually being good.
The source lays down some hard rules here about what virtue is not. I think this list is worth reading in full.
It's a great list, he says. Virtue is not an advertising campaign. Virtue is not an investment strategy. Virtue is not a cost-cutting scheme. And virtue is not a book-selling strategy.
So if you are making money off your virtue, it might not be virtue. It might just be marketing.
It brings into question the motive. If the good deed is also the profitable deed, how do we know it's actually good? The source's argument is that true virtue usually hurts a little. It costs you something. If it pays you, you should be suspicious.
This feels like a very modern problem. Corporate social responsibility, ESG scores, influencer activism. But our source here asks a great question. Is this actually new?
And this brings us to section 4, history, theology, and simony. The source asks, is virtue signaling a modern invention?
And the answer involves the Lindy effect. We should probably define that for people who aren't familiar.
Sure. The Lindy effect is a concept that applies to non-perishable things like ideas, books, or technologies. It says the longer something has survived, the longer it is likely to survive in the future.
So the Bible has been around for thousands of years. It'll probably be around for thousands more. A new pop song's been around for a week. It might not be around next month.
Right. And the source uses this to say that human behavior follows the Lindy effect. If we see a behavior today, it probably existed in the past. Virtue signaling isn't new, though perhaps it wasn't as prevalent as a major vice until now.
So he goes looking for ancient references.
He does. And he finds a perfect one in the Bible, Matthew 6:1-4.
What does it say?
It's the perfect citation for this. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. The text says that if you announce your charity with trumpets to be honored by others, you have received your reward in full.
That line always stuck with me. Received your reward in full, meaning the attention is the reward. You don't get the spiritual credit because you already cashed in for the social credit.
Exactly. The transaction is closed. You paid money. You got applause.
Yeah.
The balance is zero. The instruction from the text is to give in secret. Do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing.
Then the source connects this to a classical concept, Esse, Quam, Videri.
To be or to seem. A timeless dichotomy. The source quotes Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, who had a brilliant way of framing this.
I love this quote. It's a great dinner party question.
It is. Munger asks, would you rather be the world's greatest lover but have everyone think you're the worst, or be the world's worst lover and have everyone think you're the greatest?
It forces you to choose between the reality and the reputation, the substance or the signal.
And most people, if they are honest, struggle with that choice. We crave the reputation. But true virtue is choosing the reality. The source traces this back to Cicero, Sallust, and then Machiavelli.
And what did Machiavelli say?
Machiavelli, being Machiavelli, inverted it. He advised princes to show rather than be, to prioritize the appearance of power and virtue over the real thing.
Which feels like the playbook for modern PR and politics.
It is, but the source takes us back even further to the Middle Ages to explain the economic structure of all this. He talks about simony.
Simony. It sounds like a character from a nursery rhyme, but I know it's much darker. Give us the definition.
Simony is the buying or selling of spiritual authority or ecclesiastical privileges. In the 9th and 10th centuries, the church had a monopoly on God. If you were a rich nobleman and you had done some terrible things, robbed a village or killed a rival, you had a problem. You had sin debt.
And you needed to clear the books before you died or face the consequences?
Precisely. So the church, being an enterprising organization, invented a product, indulgences. You pay the bishop a bag of gold, and the bishop signs a piece of paper that says, you're good, God forgives you.
It's a transaction, cash for virtue.
It's the ultimate low-cost product for the seller. It costs the church $0 to print an indulgence, but they can sell it for a fortune. It's free money. The seller sells something that costs them nothing, and the buyer gets an option on paradise.
Okay, but that's medieval history. We don't buy tickets to heaven anymore?
Don't we? The source argues that we absolutely do. We just changed the currency in the name of the vendor. We don't pay for heaven anymore. We pay for social reputation.
Hold on, are you talking about charity? Because I feel like we're treading on thin ice here. If a billionaire gives $1 million to a hospital, that's a good thing, right? The hospital gets a new wing, people get healed. Who cares if he did it for his reputation?
That is the friction point. And the source is very clear. He isn't saying the hospital wing is bad. The result can be good. He's saying the moral credit the billionaire gets is fraudulent. It's a scam.
A scam. That's a strong word.
It is, but think about the math from his perspective. Let's say you make $1 billion by, I don't know, squeezing your workers, polluting a river, and destroying a local economy. That is your sin. Then you take 1% of that money, a tiny fraction, and you pay to put your name on a building.
You're washing the money.
You're washing your soul. You are trading a temporal currency, money, which you have way too much of, for a spiritual or social currency, virtue, which you have none of. And just like the medieval church, society sells this virtue cheaply.
We applaud the donor, we go to the galas, and we forget the destruction that created the wealth in the first place.
Exactly. He mentions charity dinners and marathons.
Right. The black tie gala where you pay $5,000 for a plate of chicken to fight hunger.
Or running a marathon to save kidneys.
Again, saving kidneys is good. I want to save the kidneys.
Of course. No one is anti-kidney. But the critique is, why run a marathon to do it? Why not just write the check?
The running adds a performative element.
Yes. It makes it about you and your effort, your training, your social media posts about your training, rather than just the result. It's distinct from the act of giving. It's the act of being seen giving.
It's paying for the appearance of goodness.
Which brings us back to the core message. If you are buying it, it's not virtue. The source does add a little nuance, saying some people are forced into this by peer pressure, but the fundamental structure resembles medieval simony.
So we've spent a lot of time tearing down fake virtue. We've looked at the hypocrites, the virtue merchants, the modern-day simonists. We need to pivot to the positive. What does true virtue actually look like according to this source?
This is section 5, defining true virtue. And the definition is strict, but is also very simple.
How does he define it?
Virtue is doing something for the collective, specifically when it conflicts with your narrow self-interest.
Conflicts with your self-interest. That's the key. If it helps you, if it gets you applause or makes you richer, it's not necessarily virtuous. It might just be good business.
Right. And he gets specific about who you should help. It's not just being nice to the people others care about. It's not posting a hashtag about the trendy cause of the month.
It's the unseen people.
Yes. The neglected. The unglamorous. The people whose thanks won't get you a headline. The source gives a very quiet, specific example. Calling someone who is lonely on Saturdays after tennis.
That's so small. It's almost mundane.
It is small, but it's real. There is no audience. There is no gala. No one is going to give you an award for calling a lonely acquaintance. That's precisely why it counts. It is purely for the other person, not for your social resume.
And then he drops a heavy axiom, a core principle. Courage is the only virtue you cannot fake.
This is the core of his argument. And when you think about it, it makes perfect sense. You can fake generosity. You can give away other people's money or money that means nothing to you.
You can fake piety. You can pray loudly in public.
You can fake empathy. You can cry on camera. But you cannot fake courage. Because courage, by definition, requires risk.
Meaning, if you aren't risking anything, your safety, your reputation, your money, your social standing, you aren't being courageous. You're just posturing.
Exactly. So the test of virtue is taking an uncomfortable position that is penalized by the common discourse. It's about what you do when it's unpopular.
He uses the Syrian war as a case study for this. It's a complex example. Can you unpack that?
Yeah, this is a complex one he uses to illustrate what he calls the monoculture. He argues that during the Syrian war, there was a massive PR push funded by certain interests that created a single acceptable narrative in the media.
And if you stepped outside that narrative,
you were destroyed. He says that labels like a sadist or Beatty killer were used to scare journalists and analysts into silence. Even if you were just questioning the support for certain rebel groups, who the source identifies as jihadists, you were labeled a monster.
So the risk of speaking out was immense reputational damage.
Career ending, in some cases. And he points out the rhetorical trick used to enforce this, the think of the children defense.
Right. He connects this to the Monsanto example, too. Shills will say you are starving children if you oppose GMOs. Warhawks say you are killing children if you oppose intervention.
It's a rhetorical shield used to shut down debate. It makes the person using it seem virtuous while demonizing any dissent.
So what is the virtuous act in that situation, according to the source?
Sticking up for the truth, or at least a more nuanced version of it, when it risks your reputation. If you are a journalist and you write what you believe to be true, knowing you'll be ostracized, knowing you might lose your job or your friends, that is virtue.
And the opposite, what's the vice?
Expressing popular opinions as part of mob shaming when it is perfectly safe to do so. The source calls this the definition of vice. It's a mixture of bullying and cowardice.
You get the rush of being righteous with the safety of being in the crowd.
It's the cheapest form of moral superiority there is.
That's a powerful distinction. Standing alone versus standing in the mob. One is courage, the other is cowardice, masquerading as virtue.
And that leads us to the final section. Because the source doesn't just leave us with philosophy, he gives actionable advice.
Section 6. Actionable advice for the future. He sets this up with a scenario. Young people coming to him asking, how can I save the world? I want to reduce poverty.
A noble question.
Yeah.
A question many young, idealistic people ask. But his answer is probably not what they expect to hear. He gives 3 rules.
Rule 1.
Never engage in virtue signaling. We've covered that. Don't trumpet your goodness. Just be good.
Rule 2 is a term I hear economists use, and I'm never quite sure I know what it means. Never engage in rent-seeking.
Yeah, rent-seeking is one of those terms that sounds like it's about landlords, but it's actually about manipulating systems.
Break it down for us.
Rent-seeking is when you try to increase your own wealth without creating any new wealth for society. You aren't baking a bigger pie for everyone. You're just fighting to get a bigger slice of the existing pie, usually by manipulating the rules.
So lobbying the government for a special tax break.
That's the classic example. If a company spends $1 million lobbying to get Congress to pass a law that blocks their competitors, they might make an extra $10 million. But they didn't build a better product. They didn't help the customer. They just used the system to extract value that someone else created.
So it's a non-productive activity.
It's anti-productive. It drains resources. The source says, if you want to be virtuous, you must create, not just extract.
Which leads directly to his third and arguably most controversial rule. If you are a young person and you want to reduce poverty, what should you do?
He says, start a business.
Start a business, not join the Peace Corps, not work for the UN. Start a business. Why?
Because of risk. We keep coming back to this. When you start a business, even a small one, like a bakery or a consulting firm, you are stepping into the arena. You are taking a personal risk to create value for someone else.
You have to make a product that someone actually wants to pay for with their own money.
Exactly. There's no feedback loop in a bureaucracy. You can write bad policy papers for 20 years and still get promoted. But if you bake bad bread,
you go out of business very quickly.
The market punishes you immediately. That feedback loop keeps you honest, keeps you grounded in reality. The source argues that we don't need more people sitting in air-conditioned offices theorizing about how to help the poor. We need people creating jobs, taking risks, and understanding the difficulty of generating value.
He compares the aid industry directly to business.
He does. And he is very cynical about the aid industry, arguing it's likely to cause harm. He believes most top-down aid ends up creating dependency or distorting local economies. It's a system with no skin in the game. But business, even if it's just a local shop, creates resilience and provides real value.
So his final instruction is, take risks first.
Yes. Put yourself on the line. And then, he adds, if you get rich, which is optional and difficult, then spend your money generously on others.
But first, create the value. Don't start by redistributing what you haven't created.
And don't start by telling others how to live until you have proven you can survive reality yourself.
It's a call to move away from these abstract, universal aims saving humanity and toward the concrete, risky, local reality of building something.
Homo sapiens needs to move away from the macro and back to the micro. That's the argument.
This has been quite a journey. We started with Susan Sontag and the trader in a radio station, went through the history of medieval indulgences, and ended up with a call to entrepreneurship.
It all connects. It's all about the difference between the image of goodness and the reality of risk.
To summarize the key insights here for you.
Be wary of abstracting people into constructs. Real virtue happens face-to-face, not in a PowerPoint.
Your private behavior can and will cancel out your public ideas. You cannot hide behind a theory.
And 3, there's a massive difference between seeming virtuous, which is just signaling, and being virtuous, which requires risk and courage.
And if you take nothing else away, remember the cancel function. If you don't live it, you don't really believe it.
It's a tough standard to live by.
It is. And I want to leave you with a final thought from the source. It's a historical quote that sums this up perfectly. It's from Lycurgus, the Spartan lawmaker.
A legendary figure, the father of Sparta.
Someone asked Lycurgus to establish a democracy in Sparta. They wanted him to set up this grand, fair political system for the whole city-state. And Lycurgus replied with one sentence.
Begin with your own family.
Begin with your own family. Before you try to restructure the state or the market or the world, look at how you govern your own home. Look at your own private life.
It's the ultimate challenge. It's easy to have an opinion on global politics. It's hard to be a good person to the people you live with every day.
That's the deep dive for today. Take a look at your own private governance before you demand systemic changes. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.